Hello, my name is Kevin Din, and I will be sharing how I completed my final project. For my final project, here is my ERD table with my three entities: hospitals, physician, and patient. We'll head over to Eclipse to see how I incorporated my code. Going over to my hospital object, my entity, we have the information of the ID, the name, the address, city, state, zip, and phone, where we have a many-to-many relationship with patients and a one-to-many relationship with physician. Going over to patients, we have the basic information of an ID, first name, last name, age, condition, email, and phone for our patient, where it is a many-to-many relationship with our hospital. And then lastly, our physicians with their ID, first name, last name, specialty, and phone, having a many-to-one relationship with hospital. Now, if we head over to our controller class, we can see I have implemented all of the CRUD operations for all of our entities. We'll first start off with our mapping. We've made the mapping of /healthcare, and then for our hospitals, we'll start off with post with just /hospital, and then we'll log the information of creating hospital, and I made a method in my service class of save hospital. And all that will do is return a new healthcare hospital of the DAO, which will save the hospital and all of the fields of the hospital entity. Then I did a put mapping in case we need to change any information, where the path variable is the hospital ID and the request body is the healthcare hospital entity. And then again, we'll save the hospital using the same method. And then get mapping, we just do /hospital to return all hospitals. And then in my service class, all that does is it returns all of the information from the healthcare hospital. If there is none, then it just returns null. Heading back over, I did a get mapping for the hospital ID with a specific hospital. The path variable is hospital ID, and then it retrieves the hospital with the ID of the hospital ID. And then for this one, all we need is the hospital ID, and it finds for that hospital with the hospital ID. Otherwise, it returns null. And then we did a delete mapping where we delete any hospitals and using the hospital ID. And then we'll get a message, a map of message and the deletion of hospital with ID. If we go to that, all it does is it just deletes and it removes the hospital. Then we'll head over to the physicians. The physicians, we will do a post mapping where we create a physician that is linked to a hospital ID. So we'll need the path variable a hospital ID, while the requesting body is the healthcare physician. We'll head over to that method, and all this method does, similar to the hospital method, is it finds the hospital by the hospital ID, and then it finds or creates a physician, and then it copies the employee fields, which is the physician fields, and then we'll set the hospital to the hospital, the physician to the hospital. And then lastly, it returns a healthcare physician with the physician DAO where we save the physician. Then in our put mapping, we'll just change any needed information for the physician. For this one, the path variable is both the hospital ID and physician ID, since we need to find to the physician in order to change the physician's information. Then the get mapping, I did again both a get mapping for all physicians and then for physician's ID for a specific physician. Both of these, all it does is it takes the hospital ID and it prints out all the physicians, or it takes the hospital ID and physician ID to print out the specific physician information. If there is no physician under that hospital, then all it does is returns null. And then lastly, for physicians, we did a delete mapping where we get the hospital ID and physician ID, and we delete the physician by physician ID and hospital ID. And all it does is extends to the DAO package, and we delete physicians. And I actually incorporated this into my physician's DAO, where I take the long ID and the hospital ID, and we delete the physician. And then in my get mapping, or we'll go over to the patients, where we do a post for the patient, similar to the doctor or the physicians. Will link the patient to the hospital using the path variable long hospital ID and the requesting body of healthcare patient, where we save the patient. And again, similar, we will have the hospital object, and then we'll find the hospital by ID. Then we'll have a patient, and we'll create a patient down here. And then if the patient is already null, we'll return a new patient. Otherwise, we have to find the patient by the ID. We'll copy the fields of the patient into the patient, and then we'll add the hospital to the patient, and then we'll get all the patients, and then we'll return a healthcare patient going to the patient DAO, and then we'll save the patient. Then in our put mapping, we will do the same thing. However, we do a path variable of patient ID as well in order to get the specific patient and change the information. Then we'll get mapping, again, both for all patients and for specific patients with patient ID. All it does is retrieves the information of that entity. If the patient is not null, we'll return the patient. Otherwise, we return null because there is no patient. And lastly, we delete the patient. And in deleting the patient, we'll do map of again, and then we'll have the message of delete of patient with ID. Patient ID from hospital ID was successful. And if we go into the delete patient method, all we do is we extend into the DAO package, and then we'll find by ID the patient ID or else null. And if the patient is not null, we'll get the hospitals for each patient. And then for each hospital patient, we'll get the patient, and then we'll remove the specific patient. And then we'll clear, and then we'll delete the patient. All right, now I will be showing how I will use ARC in order to populate our database. Firstly, we will start our application. And actually, before we start our application, let me show you my application.yaml, where I have the show SQL as true and DDL auto is create. Now we'll head over again to our main application, and we will run the application. Spring Boot will start. And we see that we have alter table, drop tables if needed, and our database should be running. Our application is running. We will head over to dbeaver, where I already have the project opened up. If I refresh each of these, we see that these tables are not populated at all, even including the join table of hospital_patient. Now, let's go ahead and start with advanced REST client. Our first hospital, let me just create this. We see hospital ID with 1. And let's just create another one. We'll just call this Mayo Clinic Hospital 2. We'll change the address ever so slightly. Still the same information, change the phone number. And we will post this information. Now we refresh the hospital table, and we see that, perfect. Both of the hospitals have been posted. Now we'll do a put where we'll change hospital 1 information, and we will change it. Let's just change I made this change beforehand. We'll change the name to Mayo Clinic Hospital, and we'll just name it Hospital 1 since there's a 2 now. All the other information will just keep the same. Actually, no, we'll change the phone number as well, which has already been changed beforehand. Change it a little bit more. We will do that put to get a 200 response. Refresh this. We should see the first one change, the name and the phone number. Perfect. Both have been changed. Then we'll go ahead and we will do a get. First, we'll get the first hospital. Perfect. We see that. We'll try getting the second hospital. Perfect. Mayo Clinic Hospital 2. And then we will get all hospitals. Get hospital ID with 1, hospital ID with 2. And we will save the delete CRUD methods afterwards, operations afterwards, so I can show the relationship of these entities. Then we will post physicians. I'll show you again. Physicians have nothing in the database. We'll have our first physician, Sam Hackett of cardiology. We'll post that. Great. And then we'll add a physician to the second hospital. We'll just change it up. Maybe John Trud of pulmonology. And then we'll change the phone number. Perfect. We will post this. Sam and John are both in the database. Perfect. And then we will go into a put. We'll change our first hospital of our first physician information. Let's say Sam changed their name to Tom. Same information except for just the first name. We'll change the phone number as well. Maybe they got a new phone. And then we will put this. And then after we refresh, we should see the first name and phone change. Perfect. Tom and the phone number has been changed. Then we'll do get to get the first patient of the first hospital, Tom. Then the second, our physician ID 2 of hospital 2. And then we see John. Perfect. And then we will get all physicians of, let's say, actually before then, let us add another physician then. Let us add another physician to hospital 1 to showcase the get method. This is a post. Perfect. We'll name them Philip Hard. We'll put them in pulmonology as well, might as well. And then we'll change the phone number. And then we will post this. Now we should see 2 hospital IDs of 1, and Tom and Philip both have different physician's ID. And then we'll go ahead and do a get for all of the physicians of hospital 1. And then we should see physician ID 1, physician ID 3, Philip, Tom, and Philip. Perfect. Then we'll go over and we'll skip delete for now again, and then post. Let's post a patient for our hospital 1. Perfect. And then our patient for hospital 2. Let's change this. Instead of happy, we'll do Larry Jard. We'll change the age to 48, hypertension to COPD, and then change the email. Larry Jard at outlook.com. And change the phone number completely. Perfect. And then we will post this. We should have our second patient. We will go to our patient table, refresh this, have 2 patients. Patient ID 1, patient ID 2, and then we don't know the hospital that they are linked to, and this is the purpose of the join table. We'll refresh this, and we can see the hospital 1 is linked with patient ID 1, hospital ID 2 is linked with patient ID 2. And again, let me just create a third patient. We'll do for hospital 2 and create a third patient. New Carly, Honey, 21, We'll change it to diabetes. carlyhoney@outlook.com, and then change the phone number just slightly. And then we can see in the patient table, we will have a third patient ID. And then in the hospital patient table, the joint table, we'll have two hospital ID patients with different patient IDs. Perfect. And then we will do a put method where we'll change the first patient's name, which was Happy, and we'll change her name to, oh, excuse me, we'll change her name to Susan and keep all the relevant information the same. We'll put that, have a 200 response, and then we see Happy Own will be Susan Own. Perfect. Now we will do the get methods. We'll do get patient ID 1 from hospital ID 1, which is Susan Own. We'll do that for hospital 2 and patient ID 2. You'll see Larry Jard, and then hospital 2 patient ID 3, Carly Honey, and then we'll do the get all method for the patients of hospital ID 2. Send the request, and we can see we have Larry and Carly, both patient ID 2, patient ID 3. Perfect, that works. And then finally, just to showcase all of the tables again, we will be doing a delete CRUD operation to show the entity relationships and also to show that they also work as well. Firstly, we will do the physicians. Let us delete, let me check the physicians. So we have two physicians currently at hospital ID 1 with patient ID 1 and patient ID 3. We'll go ahead and delete Philip. Philip quit his job. And let me find that. Here we go. Healthcare/hospital 1/physician. We're trying to delete Philip, so physician 3. We will send it, and then we got deletion of physician with ID 3 from hospital ID 1 was successful. We'll refresh this, and Philip is now gone. Great. Now we will do the same for the patient, where the patient with 2 of the same hospital is hospital 2. So we need to change the CRUD operation mapping to delete healthcare hospital 2 patient. Now we have patient 2 and 3. I'll delete patient 3, which that is Carly Honey. I will go ahead and send the request, and deletion of patient with ID 3 from hospital ID 2 was successful. Refreshing this, we should see Carly disappear. I think she did. And the hospital patient, we should see patient ID with 3 disappear, and that row has been deleted. Great. Now, what happens if we delete a hospital? Now, deleting a hospital should cascade down to physician and also to patient. Deleting a hospital should also delete a physician and a patient. However, as we deleted the physician of hospital ID 1 and we deleted the patient of hospital ID 2, we still see that these two hospitals, after refreshing, are still here. That is good. That's what we want. And so we'll go over to hospital, or to the delete, and we'll delete hospital 2. We'll go ahead and send the request. Deletion of hospital with ID 2 was successful. We'll go ahead and refresh the table for hospital, and we see that Mayo Clinic Hospital 2 is now deleted. We'll check the physician, and we should see that John, who is physician ID 2 and hospital 2, should now be deleted. Perfect. It cascaded down correctly. We'll check the patient table. Now, the patient table, we don't know, so we'll check the hospital patient join table. Now, hospital 2 was deleted, so patient ID 2 should delete from this row. Perfect, it did. And then we'll check the patient table, which patient ID 2, Larry, should be deleted. We'll refresh, and Larry has been deleted. Perfect. Now, all that remains from the cascade down that we did not delete from the hospital ID 1, hospital ID 1 remains. Physician ID 1 linked with hospital 1 ID remains. Patient ID 1 remains. Checking the joint table, patient ID 1 with hospital ID 1 remains. And that is how I completed my final project and showcasing all CRUD operations for all three of my entities, showing a one-to-many relationship and a many-to-many relationship. Right, going forward, I will showcase how I implement my testing. I created testing for all of my methods in my controller class. And with my Gen unit testing, I tested my inserting a hospital, retrieving all hospitals, updating hospitals, deleting hospital with patients, insert patients, retrieve patients, retrieve all patients, test update patient, test delete all patients, test insert physician, test retrieve physician, test retrieve all physician, test update physician, test delete all physicians. And those are all my tests. We'll go through one by one. Firstly, we have the test insert hospital. This is very important. So given a hospital, when the hospital is added to the hospital table, then the hospital returned is what is expected. And there is one row in the hospital table. We'll go ahead and we'll look at this. So my build insert hospital method, all it does is it returns which one address of insert address 1 into insert address 2, and these are SQLs. Here we are. That's the different hospitals. Then we want to have an expected where and then we'll check that the actual is inserted, the request, which is here, where we have the hospital entity and the healthcare hospital to hospital, and then we'll clone it, we'll set it to null, and then we'll return the controller of creating a hospital, which is here in our controller class. We'll go ahead and run this test, and we will see that the test has passed. All the information is in here to check. However, we won't go over that, or this video will be too long. And then retrieving hospital, what we do is similar. Given a hospital where we have the hospital, we insert the builded inserted hospital and the expected hospital. And then we check if the actual is equal to the hospital where we get the hospital ID. And then we assert that the actual is equal to the expected. We'll go ahead and run this. And then we can see our test has passed. Then to the test retrieve all hospitals, all we do is we have a list of the healthcare hospitals, which are the expected, and then the list of the actual, where we retrieve all the hospitals, and then we just assert that the actual is equal to the expected. We'll go ahead and run this. Perfect, it passed. And then the test update, all we do is we'll insert the hospital to we'll build an inserted hospital, and then we insert the hospital, and then we have an expected and an actual where we update the hospital, and then we assert that the actual is equal to the expected, and we assert that the rows in hospital table is equal to 1. We'll go ahead and run. We can see that the Gen unit test has passed. Next is deleting hospital with patients. And so we have to make sure that the hospitals have the patient. So we'll build a hospital and insert the hospital. Then we will get the hospital ID and we'll insert patients into the hospital using the hospital ID. And then we'll assert that the rows in hospital is 1. Assert that the rows in patient table is equal to 2, and assert that in the join table, there's 2. Then we'll delete the hospital, and then we have to assert and check if all the rows have 0, because it'll cascade down, and as we delete a hospital, it'll delete all the patients as well. We'll run that Gen unit test. Perfect, the run has passed. Then we'll go on to the patients, and then we'll insert patients. For patients and physicians, we'll have to create a hospital beforehand because of the relationship. And so we'll we'll request a hospital and we'll build it. We'll check to make sure that the hospital is created as well and it's the correct one. So we'll have the expected and then the actual. We'll check that the expected and the actual is correct, is equal. Then we'll do the same thing to a patient. We'll build and insert a patient as a requested and then an expected, and then we check if the actual is equal to the or no, we'll insert patient for insert patient test, which is the actual, and then we'll assert that the actual is equal to expected because we'll add the patient to the table. Then the patient returned is what we expect, and there's one row in the patient table. Go ahead and run this test. And perfect, it has passed. Next up is retrieving the patient, retrieving a specific patient. So we will create a hospital entity again, and then we ensure that the hospital ID is set explicitly and cannot be null, which is for this, assert that hospital ID is not null. And then given a patient, where we'll create a patient, the patient retrieved by patient ID, retrieve patient, patient ID, inserted patient is our retrieved patient, and then the actual patient is equal to the expected patient, which is the assert. And then we'll run that. And that has passed. And then I retrieve all patients where we want a list of our healthcare patients. We'll again create the hospital, and then we check for the expected by inserting 2 patients, and then the actual, and then we'll assert that the actual is equal to expected after the patients are retrieved. We'll run that test again, and then we see that it has passed. And the next is testing update patient. We'll have the hospital entity, and then we will have a patient and an update request. And then the patient is updated. Updated patient is equal to updated patient from the updated request. The patient is returned as expected. So we'll assert that they are equal, and then we check that there is one row in the patient table. Run that test, and we see the test has passed. Now we'll delete all the patients. So again, summary, we'll insert patients to the hospital using the hospital ID after creating a hospital, and then we delete the patient using this method I created in the service test support, where we have a list of the patients, and then we go into the healthcare controller, get all patients from hospitals from our get mapping. And then for all the patients, we will delete patient using the patient ID and hospital ID. So using the hospital ID and the get patient ID from the patient entity, we will delete all of the patients. That is from the, again, delete mapping of the controller class. And then afterwards, we assert and we check to make sure that all the tables are accurate in row amounts. And then we'll run this test, delete all patients. And we see, oh, there's an error. Oh, I didn't click on the test. There we go. And we see that it has passed. What you saw there just now, I have an issue that I have not been able to fix with H2 database where it holds data from previous testing, and I have not been able to solve that, unfortunately. However, each individual test, as you have seen so far, has been able to work. It's the H2 database, and likely somewhere I've messed up on the data leaking of my methods for the H2 database. All right, and then the next test is test insert patient. We will again insert a test insert physician. We will insert a physician. Again, we will have to create a hospital entity, and then given a physician request, we have a request and then the expected. The physician is added to the physician table, and then the physician returned is what is expected. We check that, and then assert rows in physician table is equal to 1. We'll go ahead and run that. and we see that the test has passed. Then we will test retrieve physician, where again we create a hospital and then we retrieve the physician using the hospital ID. We have to make sure that the hospital is not null first. Then we have the request with the inserted physician and the retrieve physician, and then we check to make sure that the actual is the expected. Go ahead and run that test. And we see that the test has passed. And then for the test retrieve all physicians, again, we're going to return a list of physicians. And we have 2 physicians inserted, and then we retrieve 2 physicians, and we make sure that the actual is equal to the expected of the 2 physicians. We'll run that unit test. We see that the test has passed. And then we have test update physician. We'll just update the physician information by having a hospital, have an initial and a update request for the physician, and a updated physician information. And then we assert that the updated is equal to the update request. And then we check that the asserted rows in the physicians table is equal to 1. Run that test, and we see that has passed. And finally, my last JUnit test, delete all physicians. We again create a hospital entity, and then we get the hospital ID, and then we insert the physician using the ID of the physician and also the hospital ID, and then we assert that the rows in hospital table is 1 and rows in physician table is 2. We'll delete all the physicians using the physician ID or the hospital ID, and then we assert the rows in the hospital is 1, however, the physicians table is 0. We will run this test, and then this test passes. Perfect. And that is how I created my final project with 3 entities, all CRUD operations, one-to-many relationship and a many-to-many relationship, and I included all JUnit testing for all of my CRUD operations. My name is Kevin Din, and thank you for listening of my final project. Bye-bye.